Section 43 of Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann, translated by Helen Tracy Low-Porter. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Read by Bruce Peary. Part 4, Chapter 11. What follows happened in the late summer of 1855, on a Sunday afternoon. The Buddenbrooks were sitting in the landscape room waiting for the consul, who was below, dressing himself. They had arranged to take a holiday walk to a pleasure garden outside the city gate, where, all except Clara and Clotilde, they were to drink coffee and, if the weather permitted, go for a row on the river. Clara and Clotilde went always on Sunday evenings to the house of a friend, where they knitted stockings for little negro children. "Papa is ridiculous," Tony said, using her habitual strong language. "Can he never be ready on time? He sits and sits and sits at his desk. Something or other must be finished. Good heavens, perhaps it is something really necessary, I don't know. But I don't believe we should actually become bankrupt if he put down his pen a quarter of an hour sooner. Well, when it's already 10 minutes too late, he remembers his appointment and comes upstairs, always 2 steps at a time, although he knows he will get palpitation at the top. And it is like that at every company, before every expedition. Isn't it possible for him to leave himself time enough, and stop soon enough? It's so irresponsible of him. You ought to talk to him about it, mamma." She sat on the sofa beside her mother, dressed in the changeable silk that was fashionable that summer, while the Frau Consul wore a heavy grey ribbed silk trimmed with black lace, and a cap of lace and stiffened tulle, tied under her chin with a satin bow. The lappets of her cap fell down on her breast. Her smooth hair was still inexorably reddish-blonde in colour, and she held a work-bag in both her white, delicately veined hands. Tom was lounging in an easy-chair beside her, smoking his cigarette, while Clara and Clotilde sat opposite each other at the window. It was a mystery how much good and nourishing food that poor Clotilde could absorb daily without any result whatever. She grew thinner and thinner, and her shapeless black frock did not conceal the fact. Her face was as long, straight, and expressionless as ever, her hair as smooth and ash-coloured, her nose as straight, but full of large pores and getting thick at the end. "Don't you think it will rain?" said Clara. The young girl had the habit of not elevating her voice at the end of a question, and of looking everybody straight in the face with a pronounced and rather forbidding look. Her brown frock was relieved only by a little stiff turnover collar and cuffs. She sat straight up, her hands in her lap. The servants had more respect for her than for anyone else in the family. It was she who held the services morning and evening now, for the consul could not read aloud without getting a feeling of oppression in the head. "Shall you take your new bashlyk?" she asked again. "The rain will spoil it. It would be a pity. I think it would be better to put off the party." "No," said Tom. "The Kistenmakers are coming. It doesn't matter. The barometer went down so suddenly. There will be a storm. It will pour, but not last long. Papa is not ready yet, so we can wait till it is over." The Frau Consul raised a protesting hand. "You think there will be a severe storm, Tom? You know I am afraid of them." "No," Tom answered. "I was down at the harbour this morning talking to Captain Clote. He is infallible. There will be a heavy rain, but no wind." The second week in September had brought belated hot weather with it. There was a southwest wind, and the city suffered more than in July. A strange-looking dark blue sky hung above the rooftops, pale on the skyline as it is in the desert. After sunset a sultry breath like a hot blast from an oven, streamed out of the small houses and up from the pavement of the narrow streets. Today the wind had gone round to the west, and at the same time the barometer had fallen sharply. A large part of the sky was still blue, but it was slowly being overcast by heavy grey-blue clouds that looked like feather pillows. Tom added, "It would be a good thing if it did rain, I think. We should collapse if we had to walk in this atmosphere. It is an unnatural heat, hotter than it ever was in Po." Ida Jungmann, with little Erica's hand in hers, came into the room. The child looked a droll little figure in her stiffly starched cotton frock. She smelled of starch and soap. She had Herr Grünlich's eyes and his rosy skin, but the upper lip was Tony's. The good Ida was already quite grey, almost white, although not out of the 40s. It was a trait of her family. The uncle that died had had white hair at 30, but her little brown eyes looked as shrewd and faithful as ever. She had been now for 20 years with the Buddenbrooks, and she realized with pride that she was indispensable. She oversaw kitchen, larders, linen and china cupboards. She made the most important purchases. She read to little Erica, made clothes for her dolls, and fetched her from school with a slice of French bread to take her walking on the mill wall. Every lady said to Frau Consul or her daughter, "What a treasure your mamselle is, my dear! Goodness, she is worth her weight in gold. 20 years, and she will be useful at 60 and more. These wiry people are. What faithful eyes she has! I envy you, my love." But Ida Jungmann was very reserved. She knew her own position, and when some ordinary nurse-girl came and sat down with her charge on the same bench and tried to enter into conversation, Ida Jungmann would say, "There is a draught here, Erica," and get up and go. Tony drew her little daughter to her and kissed the rosy cheeks, and the Frau Consul stretched out her hand with rather an absent smile, for she was looking anxiously at the sky, which grew darker and darker. Her left hand fingered the sofa pillows nervously, and her light eyes wandered restlessly to the window. Erica was allowed to sit next her grandmother, and Ida sat up straight on a chair and began to knit. Thus all waited silently for the consul. The air was heavy. The last bit of blue had disappeared. The dark grey sky lowered heavy and swollen over them. The colours in the room changed. The yellow of furniture and hangings and the tones of the landscapes on the walls were all quenched, like the gay shades in Tony's frock and the brightness of their eyes. Even the west wind, which had been playing in the churchyard of St. Mary's and whirling the dust around in the darkening street, was suddenly quiet. This breathless moment of absolute calm came without warning, like some unexpected, soundless, awful event. The sultriness grew heavier, the atmosphere seemed to increase its weight in a second. It oppressed the brain, it rested on the heart, it prevented the breathing. A swallow flew so low over the pavement that its wings touched. And this pressure that one could not lift, this tension, this growing weight on the whole organism, would have become unbearable had it lasted even the smallest part of a second longer, if, at its height, there had not come a relief, a release, a little break somewhere, soundless yet perceptible. And at the same moment, without any premonitory drops, the rain fell down in sheets, filling the gutters and overflowing the pavements. Thomas, whose illness had taught him to pay attention to his nerves, bent over in this second, made a motion toward his head, and flung away his cigarette. He looked around the circle to see if the others had felt anything. He thought his mother had, perhaps. The others did not seem to be aware. The Frau Consul was looking out now into the thick, streaming rain, which quite hid the church from view. She sighed. "Thank God." "There," said Tony, "that will cool the air in 2 minutes. But the drops will be hanging on the trees outside. We can drink coffee in the veranda. Open the window, Tilda." The noise of the rain grew louder. It almost roared. Everything pattered, streamed, rushed, foamed. The wind came up and blew the thick veils of water, tore them apart and flung them about. It grew cooler every minute. Lena, the maidservant, came running through the hall and burst so suddenly into the room that Ida Jungmann called out sharply, "I say, what do you mean?" Lena's expressionless blue eyes were wide open. Her jaws worked without making a sound. "Oh, Frau Consul," she got out at last. "Come, come quick! Oh, what a scare!" "Yes," Tony said, "she's probably broken something again. Very likely the good porcelain. Oh, these servants of yours, mamma." But the girl burst out, "Oh no, Mam Grunlich, if that's all it was. It's the master. I were bringing him his boots, and there he sits, and can't speak, on his chair, and I says to myself, there's something wrong there. The Herr Consul—" "Get Grabo," cried Thomas, and ran out of the room. "My God! Oh, my God!" cried the Frau Consul, putting her hands to her face and hurrying out. "Quick, get a wagon and fetch Grabo," Tony repeated breathlessly. Everybody flew downstairs and through the breakfast-room into the bedroom. But Johann Buddenbrook was already dead. End of section 43.